Hi boys, I hope you're well and that you're starting to cope a little bit with this chapter. Something that I want to stress is for you to be able to do well in this chapter, you really need to know the layouts of your control accounts. Okay, so you need to know your creditors control account and debtors control account from the inside out. And you need to know which source documents are associated with which journals. So if an adjustment entry speaks about a debit note, you need to know immediately it's the CAJ. Or if it speaks about an invoice that we received, you immediately need to know it's a CJ transaction. Okay, so you need to know that. And you need to know when an adjustment entry will affect the control account or the list, or both the control accounts and the list. And if you are still very confused, I want to urge you to go back and look at that video that I posted at the beginning of last week that explains this chapter. Otherwise, you will really struggle. Okay, so in this activity, 11.4, it says that the net total of the creditors list extracted from the creditors ledger of Latif Traders on 30 September 2019 did not correspond with the balance of their creditors control account. In other words, reconciliation is necessary because the creditors list must correspond with the balance of the creditors control account. Then in the required part, they just say that you have to do the correct creditors control account, the correct creditors list, and give 2 internal control procedures for creditors. And then in the information, this part of the information, they give you everything you need to set up the creditors control account before any adjustments were made. Okay, so they give you the opening balance on 1 September 2019 as 19,017. So you go and write it in your creditors control account, opening balance 19,017. Then they give you the amounts that were posted to the creditors control account at the end of the month. Okay, so the total of the creditors journal, the 64,050, will be posted as total purchases on the credit side of creditors control, 64,050. The total of the CAJ, 10,662, will go to the debit side because we are returning things. Okay, 10,662 from the CAJ. The total of the CPJ, payments and discount received, will go to the debit side of your creditors control account because we are paying, so we owe less, and we are receiving discounts, so we owe even less. Okay, I added them together in the same line just to save some lines and to keep things uncomplicated. And then the totals of the general journal, they gave you debits, which will be your journal debits value that goes to the debit side of creditors control. And they gave you credits, which will be your journal credit value that goes to the credit side of creditors control. Okay, remember to write your amounts in brackets in the details column, in open brackets, because that gives you space to do the adjustment as we go through them. Then they also gave you a creditors list, okay, with some amounts that we owed creditors before the adjustments were taken into account. And you would notice that in Bekwa Traders, one of our creditors actually have a debit balance, which from a creditor's perspective is negative. In other words, we don't owe them, they actually owe us. So you have to go and quickly set up a provisional creditors list by writing the creditors' names and the amounts owed to them, or in Bekwa's case, they owe to us, in brackets. And all of this needs to be done before you start to do the adjustments. Okay, so now we can start looking at the adjustments. The first adjustment said an invoice, immediately you need to know CJ, for 2,700 Rand received from Lopes Stores was posted to the account of Lawrence Traders in the creditors ledger. So this is an error that needs to be corrected in the general journal because we took an amount from the CJ to the wrong creditors account. In the general journal, it will look like this. We will have to go and debit creditors control of Lawrence traders because we didn't actually buy stock from them, but we indicated or we posted the value to their account. So debit them with the 2,700 and they are one of our creditors. So it goes to the debit column of creditors control. And then we will have to go and credit creditors control of Loubser Stores because that's the creditor that we actually bought the stock from, 2,700 Rand, and it will go to the credit side of creditors control. So I want you to notice that creditors control will be affected on the debit side and on the credit side. In other words, our total journal debits increase and our total journal credits increase. So in the creditors control account, you will have to say plus 2,700 for journal debits and plus 2,700 for journal credits. Then in the list, we also need to fix this. Okay, so you will have to say Loubser Stores needs to be increased because we actually bought the goods from them on credit, so we owe them more. And Lawrence Traders needs to be decreased because we didn't buy from them. Okay, so we take that 2,700 Rand out. The reason why I made a little 1 here next to all of the values is because it just indicates that this deals with adjustment entry number 1. Then the next adjustment entry said Latif Traders decided to transfer the account of Mbekwa Traders to the debtors ledger. Okay, you will remember they had a debit balance in any case. So they owe us money and we're taking them from the creditors ledger to the debtors ledger. No entry has been made in the general journal. To fix this in the general journal, I'm going to do it here. You will have to go and credit creditors control. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. The reason why I'm crediting creditors control of Mbekwa Traders is because at the moment they've got a debit balance of 350 Rand. And the only way to get rid of a debit is to go and credit it. And we will go and debit debtors control because we are taking them to the debtors ledger, still Mbekwa Traders, with the 350 Rand. So this will affect our debtors control on the debit side and our creditors control on the credit side. We don't care about debtors control for the moment, but we know that our total journal credits in the creditors control account will suddenly be 350 Rand more. So your journal credits will have an additional 350 Rand because of this adjustment entry number 2. In the creditors list, we credited Mbekwa Traders. In other words, we added 350 Rand, and now you will see minus 350 plus 350 will total to 0. So they won't exist in our creditors ledger anymore. The next adjustment entry, number 3, said an invoice for 3,600 Rand for goods bought on account from Welsh Stores was incorrectly entered in the CJ as 6,300 Rand. Okay, so now what happened here is the value was overstated in the creditors journal. Okay, we actually only bought goods with 3,600 Rand, but we recorded it in the CJ as 6,300 Rand. So we recorded R2,700 more than we should have. Because the invoice was incorrectly recorded in the CJ, it would have been incorrectly taken to the list, so we need to fix the list, but the wrong value will also have been part of the total purchases column total. Okay, so it will also affect the control account. Let's go and do this. So your total purchases value must be decreased by 2,700 Rand because it was overstated, and Welsh Stores account must also be decreased by that 2,700 Rand in your list. Then the next adjustment entry, number 4, said vehicle parts to the value of 1,450 Rand were returned to CJ Motors. This was correctly recorded in the CAJ. Okay, so the fact that the journal is correct tells you it won't affect the control account. Nothing is wrong in the control account. But when we posted to the account of CJ Motors, it was posted as a credit purchase. Okay, so now in CJ Motors, we should have debited their account because we returned stuff. We should have decreased their account, but we actually increased their account accidentally. So the focus will be on the list. In your list, if you deduct 1,450 Rand, you only take away the credit that we made. Okay, so we accidentally credited their account as if it was an invoice. So now if we take away 1,450 Rand, it's just as if we didn't record anything at all. But we actually sent vehicle parts back. Okay, so we need to owe them 1,450 Rand less. So you have to go and decrease another 1,450 Rand. Remember what I said in the previous video of 11.3. If there is an entry that should have been a debit that was a credit in the list, then the first minus 1,450 will just bring us to ground zero, and the next minus 1,450 will correct the error. Okay, remember that. Then the adjustment entry number 5 is the one that I posted on Google Classroom, had an error on it. It says the total of the CJ, but it shouldn't be CJ, it should be CAJ. So the total of the CAJ was overcast by 60 Rand. And if there's a problem with the journal total, it won't affect the list, it will only affect the control account. So in your control account, remember I said it shouldn't be CJ, it should be CAJ. You have to subtract 60 Rand because the total was overstated. Won't affect the list. And then the last adjustment entry said Latif Traders buys goods from and sells goods to Welsh stores. The debit balance of 300 Rand on Welsh stores account in the debtors ledger must be transferred to their account in the creditors ledger. No entry has been made. Okay, so instead of Welsh stores paying us back and we paying them back, we decided to transfer the amount that they owe us in the debtors ledger to the creditors ledger to just decrease the value that we owe them a little bit. We need to do this in the general journal because no entry has been made. To do this in a general journal, it's a debit balance in the debtors control account. Okay, so we will have to take that debit balance out. And the only way to take out a debit is to go and credit debtors control. Okay, so I'm going to start with the credit leg of this transaction. Debtors control, Welsh stores, 300 Rand. Okay, now we're moving that debit balance to the creditors control account. So we debit creditors control. This will affect creditors control on the debit side and will affect debtors control on the credit side. We don't really care about debtors control for the moment, but we know that our total journal debits in creditors control will increase with 300 Rand. Okay, so journal debits in creditors control needs to be plus 300 Rand. Okay, and then Welsh stores needs to be minus 300 Rand because a debit for a creditor is actually a minus here. Okay, so don't go and make a minus there. It's already on the side where creditors control decrease, but make a minus here. And then now, after we've done all of our entries, I want you to quickly just close all of the brackets and balance your control account like this. Okay, so your balance brought down on the 1st of October will be 18,665, and then you do the same with your list. Close all the brackets, do your calculations, and total your creditors list, which gives us the same value as the balance in the control account, 18,665. And then they just said you have to list 2 internal control procedures for creditors. Okay, I'm not going to read through them. This was part of term 1 work, so you can just pause the video here.